Okay, hello, good afternoon. My name is Scott McCutcheon of Sovereign Studios. Welcome to episode 22 of my Yamaha Virago Café Racer project. If you're just tuning in, we just fitted on these mad exhaust pipes. These things are, well, by definition, mad. Pun. They're pretty cool looking, right? I'm pretty happy with them. But they're not going to start the bike by themselves, so we still got a lot of work to do. That being said, today I thought we'd go ahead and finish up the gas tank. If you recall from, I think, episode 20 or something like that, we went ahead and sealed the inside of this tank using the KBS Coatings sealer, which I'm super happy with. But now that I think I'm done modifying it, with the tab that we put on in a previous video and cutting the holes in there, I don't think we have any other modifications to do to the tank. So I think we're ready to go ahead and paint it and get it ready for, proper use. So that's really going to be our focus for the for today's video. I got myself some Bondo and some orbital sanders, and some sanding discs. We're going to go take it to it and do some priming coats and get ready for the real paint. So the trick is that I happen to be, I figured while I'm at it, I'd put a coat of black on the Buell, because I got this whole thing of, flat black motor coater. This is the same stuff we used back in episode 2 to paint the rest of the bike. But I got another quart of that, I think is what this was, or a pint. And that's way too much for just the tank of the Virago. So I figured while I was at it, I've been kind of wanting to clean up the Buell a little bit. So I took all the plastics off the Buell, and we're going to slap those with a coat of flat black while we're at it. Benefit being that we don't want to waste any of this paint, and it's the same thing with this, this clear coat that we got for it. So this is some flat clear, or clear matte, clear coat. So this should give it a real nice hard surface, gasoline protected and that sort of thing. Very good. So we'll do that maybe today. I don't know. We're gonna have to bust out the probably not today, actually. We're gonna do the base coatings today, and then we're gonna have to bust out the actual air gun like we did back in episode 2 to get the best final coats on there with the KBS motor coater. So we're just going to do the prep and the prime today. So cool. Let's get to it. Okay, so you guys have if you've watched any of the other videos that were centered around the tank, you guys know it's in pretty good shape, especially after we did the sealant on the inside. So I feel like the inside's really good, and now we need to make the outside really good. So we're going to do that with a little bit of Bondo, which is just, the standard body repair kit stuff. There's not too much that needs to happen here. Really, the only things that I want to do is I want to take care of this one dent, which I realized was pretty noticeable after we painted the tank in episode 2. So we already kind of had a little bit of black get on this, which is great. But that definitely helped me notice that this dent is noticeable, so I want to fix that. So we'll fill it in with a little bit of Bondo, and then around the weld where we welded this tab on in one of the previous videos, you can see it's not exactly perfect. I tried to sand it out as best I could, but we're going to fill that in to make that a little more uniform too. So we'll fill it with Bondo and make sure that it's a lot smoother. It doesn't look as great underneath, but you're not going to see it ever. So we'll still fill it in a little bit to make it smoother, just so that it looks better when you actually get up under the tank. But yeah, so let's do those two parts. Okay, so if you've never used Bondo before, it's pretty easy to do. There's not much to it. This is their stage 2 fill kit. So it's really just Bondo body filler, not much else to it. it comes with this little cap that you can use to mix it. I'm not going to get that dirty because we're not going to use a ton, so I want to reuse it. So I'm going to use this instead. But inside there is also this cream hardener that'll actually make this Bondo filler harden. So you mix these two chemicals together and it'll harden, but you want to obviously spread it first. It did come with, it came with a, tiny spreader and, some wool patches if you end up needing those, but we don't. Yeah, so let's go ahead and get started. Show you how this works. This Bondo stuff, there ain't really much to it. So there's the cream filler. And here's the hardener. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit of this hardener and we're just going to spread that in there. And you don't need to use a lot of this hardener. That's actually probably too much compared to what I'm going to use. And then we'll take some of this cream filler. And it's kind of goopy, but it should just plop down in there. And once you have a good amount, just go ahead and start mixing it up. And you'll see it turn this brown color as you start mixing the red hardener in there. Let's go ahead and close this up. I think that's going to be all we need. And so this is where it kind of starts getting a little dirty. You might want some gloves. Alright, so once you got this smooth brown color, you're ready to apply this stuff. It's going to start hardening, and it takes 30 minutes to an hour or so to harden. So you're going to want to get it spread on wherever you need it pretty quickly. So first step for us is going to be back here where we had this dent. And so the idea is that you can fill in a lot more than you need. This is fill. The point is you're supposed to fill it. So fill in a lot more than you'll need because you'll sand it off. And you'll be left with whatever you have after. Try and get it spread out so that it's easier to sand down, and then you should be good to go. And now we'll kind of get down here too. So we definitely don't want to have Bondo filler in that hole at all. So we're going to clean that up here real fast. We really just want it over the weld, to smooth those out. We definitely don't want it on the tab itself. It's not pretty, but it'll do the trick. And of course, any excess that you may have gotten on the little tab here, if you built this the way I did, you're going to want to take that off before it hardens. Just because you do want a nice clean tab. Yeah, you can already feel it having started to harden. Look at that, it's already hard. Yeah, so that hardens pretty fast. That was 10 minutes or so before this whole bucket was unusable. Pretty fast. Okay, we've given this a little time to harden, so let's go ahead. I think it's good enough now to where we can start sanding it off. So grab yourself an orbital sander. This is a Black & Decker piece that I bought on Amazon for like 20 or 30 bucks. There's not much to it. Just that orbital motion for the sander you're going to want. It makes it a lot easier if you're doing this sort of thing. And then we'll just take off the layer. Okay, so Bondo sands off real easily, but as you see here, we now have a much cleaner surface, so that once we got paint on it, you're not going to be able to notice any blemishes there. And same thing over here, where that dent is now non-existent. And same deal. So let's go ahead and clean this up, and we'll hit it with some primer. Okay, we've cleaned this up of any extraneous dust particles. You know, we brushed it off real good, rinsed it off, cleaned it up. And you guys may remember this tent, this painting tent that I picked up for episode 2. It's a little more difficult to put together inside, but it does get together. These are the parts for my Buell that I'm working on painting, and we'll get the tank down here. Let me grab another piece of cardboard. Okay, so you know, like this thing has been painted before. So if you go back to episode 2, you can see where we primed and painted it. And I thought we did a pretty good job back then. You know, obviously we got a lot of the engine parts and all that stuff. All looks real good. You know, from back when we did it in episode 2. It looks great. Cool. So, you know, there's no need, I think, for us to use another coat of actual primer. So instead, I'm just using what I have around, and we're going to spray it with some of this Rust-Oleum stuff. And we'll give it a couple coats of this. I still got another can. This one's empty. I still got another few cans that we'll spray it with as primer, you know. And that should work out okay. So I've got a lot of spare time in terms of how this needs to be painted, or I've bought myself a lot of time. It's really just going to end up being like 5 or 6 coats of this Rust-Oleum garbage paint. And it's not garbage paint, it's actually really good paint, but you know, it's not that great if it's like your final coat. So basically we'll use this as the base coat. We'll use the motor coat or flat as the final color coat, and then we'll hit it with this clear matte stuff, which should make it look really good. Okay, we slapped another coat on the tank, coat on the wheel. That stuff's wet, so we'll let it dry, and we'll come back to this tomorrow. I'm pretty much out of this Rust-Oleum paint, so pretty much done for the primer coats, I think. Primer coats. So we'll get ready to use this stuff real soon. So we got a lot of our parts painted and dried. However, we got in the rest of the parts for our wheel conversion, which we'll talk more about in the next episode. But we're going to want to hit those with paint as well. So we'll get to talking about this wheel conversion here in a bit. But this is the 2nd generation Virago wheel that will allow us to mount a fatter tire, as well as give us 5 spokes to match the OEM Yamaha R6 front wheel, which has 5 spokes. So we want to get it to match as best we can. So that's the swap we're going to do. But we just got these in the mail today, and you know, it's looking pretty rough. So we're going to go ahead and scuff it up. This is the rear brake drum from the 2nd gen. So we'll get that scuffed up. Here's the rear axle we'll use. And we'll slap these with a coat of paint as well before we actually hit them with our, you know, final coating of flat and the matte clear. So let's get started. Okay, we got the rest of our conversion parts ready and prepped and cleaned. They were pretty nasty after getting mailed via eBay, whoever shipped them off. So you know, buying parts like that, usually you get some dirty stuff, so you kind of gotta clean it up. But now that we got it all nice and clean, put it, you know, cleaned it with a degreaser and stuff like that, and got it real nice. We buffed out some of the chrome using some light grit sandpaper, and now we'll throw a couple more coats of flat black on it. Okay, everything in here looks like it turned out pretty good in terms of getting a flat black base coat. This looks good, you know. So this was just done with the Rust-Oleum spray paint, you know, just the standard stuff you can get at Home Depot, which I think looks fine, you know. But it's probably not very sturdy, especially if, you know, you get gasoline on it or rocks hit it or something like that. You'd probably want to get clear coat on it for sure. But for us, we're going to cover it with the good paint, this motor coater stuff, which is way better. We're going to coat all the parts with that, and then we're going to hit it with this this real strong clear coat. So this is actually a flat, like matte clear coat, which I've never used before, but hopefully it works real well. But this is also one of those things where you're going to have to hit the button on the bottom of the can, you know, to release the hardener. You know, you shake it up, release the hardener, shake it up some more, and then we spray the can before it's, you know, hardened and useless. So we'll get that done. But it should make for a real nice flat, you know, protective coat, clear protective coat on top of all this gloss, or all this other Rust-Oleum paint. So we'll pop out the air gun here in a second and get that sprayed. At least with the gas tank and, you know, maybe one or two other parts, we'll go ahead and get a good wet sand on these. It doesn't look like we're going to need it on some of the other parts, but on the more visible parts, especially the gas tank, you know, since we did a lot of work to this, we want to make sure it's real nice and smooth. So, you know, get some 2000 grit sandpaper and, you know, some water, spray it on there, sand it out. Make sure it's got a good soft shine to it. Alright, so once you've got the parts wet sanded, I'm not going to wet sand the wheels. They're pretty smooth anyway because the metal was already smooth for a lot of this stuff. Same goes for like the brake hub. You can see where it's like near perfect because it was still pretty in real good shape, you know. That air filter there, you know, the control lever. Same thing for that wheel, really. We did a pretty good job sanding them down prior to painting in the first place, so those metal bits are pretty good. But the plastic bits for my Buell, as well as the Virago's gas tank, definitely needed some wet sanding to get smooth, and now they're real nice and smooth to the touch. And they got that good black base coat. So this other paint should adhere real well. We may regret not doing the wet sanding on these in the future, but you know, whatever. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. So let's we'll go ahead and get the air guns. You might remember the air guns back from episode 2. This is like your standard air gun kit you get from Home Depot. I don't remember exactly how much it was. It was less than $100, I think. But the standard gun's here, and this is the one we're going to end up using. This is the high volume, low pressure gun, HVLP. So we'll end up using this one to spray it. So we'll go ahead and get the paint stored up and do our thing. We went ahead and put the gun together. You guys can go back to episode 2 to watch how we do that. We'll go ahead and pop this guy open, shake it up a good bit, and we'll pop this guy open, pour it all into the gun. A nice flat black, and make sure we want to try and strain it just to be sure. And hopefully this is enough to do all the coats we want. We're going to end up doing, I estimated probably 2 to 3 coats for all the parts, but my part count kind of went up as I was finding more stuff to paint. But luckily they were smaller parts, so hopefully it's not that big of a deal in terms of my measurement. This HVLP gun does really good in terms of conserving paint. So if I recall from last time, it took a while to run out of this whole pint, I think is what this is. So it took a while to run out of it. So I'm hoping that there's enough here. Worst comes to worst, you know, it'll take a couple extra days, but I'll have to order another can. So hopefully that's not the case. Make sure you got it on good and tight. Okay, we're all set up. Let's put some paint on there. So we're looking really good now. You know, these parts are starting to come together really well. I am gonna say that using that HPLV spray gun with only a pint of that paint, I've done 2 coats now, and well, I'm not gonna pull the cap off, but I've done 2 coats on all of those parts already, and I've still got like half the pint left. So I'm gonna end up doing probably like 5, maybe 6 coats on every part in here with just a pint of that paint. So that's a pretty good deal, I think. Just definitely having that HPLV gun for sure. Okay, well, we've got about 6 coats or so, maybe 7 on this stuff. Let's see what we got. Cool. Oh, that looks good. It's got that like flake to it. From the air. It looks great. I'm disappointed about that, but I'll scrape that off, no big deal. Very good, very good. Looks like our dent got patched up real nicely. Tab looks a lot better. And the scuff mark I had on the top of the tank looks clean. Okay. Very cool. I'm real happy with that. Now we're going to do the clear coats. Okay, so the clear coat we're going to apply is this Spray Max 2K clear matte paint. And this is a flat clear. So like it's not going to be glossy like most of the clears, or at least it shouldn't be. I went ahead and picked up 2 cans. I'm expecting this to give me probably 3, maybe 4 coats on all these parts. 2 at the very least. You know, I think I can get 1 can for everything in there. So at the very least, I'll get 2 coats. If you've never used a clear coat like this, this is you know, like a pretty intense clear coat. This is the sort of thing that, you know, they use professionally, you know, for doing all this kind of thing. It actually has a hardener in it, so you'll see at the bottom of the can that little pin there, and that pin once you crack it, it releases this hardener in there, and you have about 48 hours before the can basically becomes worthless after that. You know, so it'll harden, and it's really good stuff. You want to keep this away from you know, a lot of, you know, it's obviously dangerous, so be careful with it. And yeah, we'll go from there. So how you do this, you know, it works pretty much more or less just like a regular spray can. You know, we'll shake it up. All right, and then what's going to happen is you're going to take this this little red thing out of the cap, and this is your like plunger, and you'll fit it just right over there, and you know, squeeze in and punch that in there, and once it's in there, you know, you're pretty much good to go. And then you can pretty much just use it like any other spray can. So I'm gonna go ahead and get geared up, and we'll get spraying. All right, these are looking real good. Turns out about one of these cans is good for about 1.5 coats on all these parts. So So, you know, these the 2 cans, you know, we might be looking at 2 or 3 coats for all these parts. I think it's even just the 1 can looks like it turned out great. This is 1 can dry, so I'm about to spray the 2nd coat now, and we'll knock it out. Okay, with our final coats of clear on the parts there, we're going to let them dry probably about 2 days. We'll probably just leave them alone for, you know, the next day or 2. And then once I'm sure they're certainly dry, we'll go ahead and do some wet sanding on it, polish the parts with some Meguiar's polishing compound, and then we'll be good to go. This stuff here, we're probably only going to do that stuff to the plastic parts for the Buell, as well as the gas tank for the Virago. I don't think we're going to end up doing it for the wheels. I think I'm just going to leave the wheels as is, depending on what they feel like to the touch, once the clear is all dry. But I do have, as you can see back there, I got new tires to slap on those wheels, and I'm going to get them on real fast. So probably within the next couple days, I'm going to take it out to one of the shops and have them swap the tires on those rims, so we can get it back on the bike. Otherwise, I guess we'll catch back up with this video here in a bit. Okay, so let's take a look at how we did. Everything here looks really good. I'm pretty happy with how all this looks like it turned out. Everything looks great. That's exciting. All these parts look awesome. I don't really see any particular imperfections. You know, our dent in the tank is gone now. Cool, we fixed that up real well. Same thing over here. The tab looks real good. Cool. I'm pretty excited. This is I think this is good work. I think this will be really good looking. So, I think we may go ahead and wet sand the gas tank a little bit, and then polish it up with some of the Meguiar's compound, just to be on the safe side. But we might save that for once it's fully installed. Either way, paint, pretty good stuff, right? So, cool. Alright, so that about wraps it up for painting. I don't think we're going to have to paint anything else on the Virago. You know, so I think it turned out pretty good in terms of how that color looks. That clear coat really did a good number on this stuff. It looks great. That matte clear. You know, it did the same thing for the Buell, and we got the parts put on the Buell. Now the Buell looks real sharp. I think that's a pretty clean look for that. I definitely like it. Either way, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you enjoyed this, hit like, subscribe, check out my game on Steam, Ethereal Legends. Let me know what you think. We'll catch back up in the next episode where we'll finish up the rear wheel swap from the 2nd gen Virago, and hopefully we can get to working on the battery box here in a bit. So stay tuned.